My dad laughed and said, "Your sister earned everything on her own, unlike you." I replied. The dining room went silent. Dad laughed, raising his glass like it was a toast. "Your sister earned everything on her own. Unlike you?" The laughter stuck in my throat. Mom's smile froze halfway. My sister smirked, waiting for me to shrink. Instead, I said quietly, "Then I'll stop sending you money." The color drained from Dad's face. The fork fell from my sister's hand. And in that silence, our whole family unraveled. My name's Madison Cole. I'm 31, and that was the night I stopped being the obedient daughter. Before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? From the outside, we were perfect. We were the family on the Christmas cards, the ones in the matching sweaters, smiling like we meant it. We were the Coles. We had the nice 2-story house in the good neighborhood, the one with the green lawn and the flowers Mom planted every spring. Our neighbors called us the ideal family. They saw us at Sunday barbecues. They saw Dad, Richard, washing his car in the driveway. They saw Mom, Susan, bringing over cookies. They saw my sister, Caroline, and me, the 2 perfect daughters. They didn't see what happened when the front door closed. A house is just walls. A smile can hide anything. Inside our house, the silence was loud. It was heavy. It was filled with all the things we never said. The cracks in our family didn't just run deep. They were the foundation. My father, Richard, was the one in charge. He didn't just run our family. He managed it, like a CEO. His voice was the only one that mattered at the dinner table. He was loud. He was proud. He was impossible to please. In his world, there were winners and losers, and he decided who was who. He loved to talk about achievements, about success, about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. But his standards were always moving. Every family dinner felt like a performance review, and I always failed. "Madison, why is your car still 3 years old? Don't you want to project success? Madison, your hair is simple. You should try to look more like your sister. Madison, that little firm of yours. Is it still a hobby, or are you making real money yet?" He didn't understand quiet. He didn't understand steady. I owned my own accounting firm in Dallas. I built it from nothing. I started in my tiny apartment with a secondhand laptop and a business plan I wrote on napkins. Now I had a small office downtown. I had 3 employees. I had clients who trusted me. I was good at my job. To my father, it was Madison's little hobby. It didn't matter that my hobby paid my mortgage, my car loan, and my bills, with plenty left over. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't his kind of success. My mother, Susan, was the opposite. She was gentle. She was kind. And she was tired. I could see it in her eyes. Mom was the family translator. She spent her entire life translating Dad's arrogance into apologies. When he would snap at me, "That's a stupid idea, Madison," Mom would rush in later. "He's just stressed, dear. He doesn't mean it." When he would ignore a small victory I shared, she would squeeze my hand. "He's just busy. He's proud of you. He just doesn't know how to show it." She was the peacemaker. But peace in our house just meant keeping Dad calm. She apologized for him so often that her apologies started to sound like excuses. I wondered sometimes what she had given up to be this person. I remembered seeing an old easel in the attic covered in a dusty sheet. She used to love to paint. I hadn't seen her touch a brush in 20 years. She had slowly disappeared, becoming a ghost in her own home, her only job to manage the moods of the man she married. And then there was Caroline, my sister, 2 years older, the shining star. Caroline was the one who could do no wrong. She was the sun. Everyone in our family just revolved around her. She was bright and shiny and empty. She was everything Dad wanted in a daughter. She was loud. She was confident. She worked at a big, flashy marketing firm, a job Dad had gotten for her through one of his friends. She drove a new company car. She wore expensive clothes. She knew exactly what to say to Dad, how to laugh at his jokes, how to mirror his opinions. She was his perfect reflection, and he loved her for it. When we were kids, if Caroline broke a vase, I was blamed for leaving it on the table. If she failed a test, the teacher was an idiot. If she dented the car, I was blamed for distracting her from the passenger seat. She lived in the spotlight. It was warm there. She soaked it all up. She was a magpie. She loved shiny things. And if you had something shiny, she wanted it. Your new sweater. Your new idea at dinner. Your new friend. She'd take it, and when she was done, she'd break it. I learned to live in the shadows. It was safer there. While Caroline was getting applause for being loud, I was in my room, studying. While she was at parties, I was building my business plan. While she was collecting titles, I was building a life. I built my own quiet success. I had my own apartment, my own space. It was clean. It was orderly. It was quiet. My life was about numbers. I loved numbers. Numbers were clean. They were honest. 2 + 2 always equals 4. It never lies to you. It never changes its mind. It never tells you you're not good enough or that your sister did it better. It's just the truth. I loved the truth. Maybe that's why my family was so hard. I remember one Sunday dinner, about 6 months before the pandemic started. I was bursting with news. I had just signed the biggest client of my career, a contract that would double my firm's revenue. It was a game changer. I had worked for 6 weeks on the proposal, barely sleeping. I waited for a pause in the conversation. Dad was laughing at a story Caroline was telling about her office. "That's great, Dad." I finally cut in, my voice too loud. They all looked at me. "I have some good news. I landed the Henderson account today." Dad was already cutting his steak. He looked up, annoyed that I had interrupted. What's that? The Henderson account? Good for you, Madison." He turned back to Caroline. "So then what did your boss say?" My face burned. "Dad, it's a really big deal." Caroline reached over and patted my hand. Her rings were cold. "Oh, Maddie, that's great. I'm so proud of you for trying so hard with your little business." Trying? I wasn't trying. I did it. I just nodded. I ate my food. I let the burning in my chest die down. I looked at Mom. She gave me that small, sad smile. "He's just busy, dear." That was the night I stopped sharing. I stopped sharing my successes. I stopped sharing my failures. I stopped sharing anything. It was safer to be the quiet one, the reliable one, the invisible one. I just existed. I was the wallpaper. I was the one who showed up, smiled politely, and paid for my own meal. I was the obedient daughter, and I kept playing my part. I played it through the holidays. I played it through the birthdays. I played it right up until the world shut down, and that's when the perfect family finally started to crack. That's when my father, the great CEO, was finally faced with a problem he couldn't bully. And that's when they all turned to me. Not to Madison, the daughter, to Madison, the bank. When the world shut down, my father's world collapsed. His business was in commercial real estate. He sold big, shiny office buildings. He loved the handshake, the power lunch, the smell of a new lease. He was Richard Cole, the man who made deals, and then, suddenly, no one was in offices. No one was making deals. At first, he just called it a pause. "It's temporary, Madison," he'd say over the phone, his voice too loud. "These people will get sick of their living rooms. They'll be begging to come back to the office by summer." Summer came. The offices were still empty. His voice got quieter. He stopped talking about deals and started talking about idiot politicians. He spent his days in his home office, the door closed, the sound of the TV news always leaking out. I was busy. My little hobby was in high demand. Accounting firms were essential. People were scared. They needed help with emergency loans, with payroll, with figuring out how to stay afloat. My employees and I worked from our homes. We worked 16-hour days. I was exhausted, but I was stable. My numbers were still clean. They still added up. Then I got the call from Mom. "Don't tell your father I'm calling," she whispered. Her voice was thin. "Mom, what's wrong?" I was at my desk, my screen filled with spreadsheets. They're talking about the house, Maddie. The bank. My blood went cold. "What about the house?" "He's missed payments. 3 of them. He said he was handling it. He said he had savings, but..." "Oh, Maddie, I found a letter. A foreclosure notice." She started to cry. A quiet, hopeless sound. "He's so proud," she sobbed. He won't take help." I finished for her. I knew my father. Taking a handout, especially from me, would be worse than losing the house. He would rather be homeless than admit he had failed. "I'll handle it, Mom," I said. My voice was steady. It was the accountant's voice. "How?" "He'll just yell. He'll throw you out. He won't know," I said. "Don't worry. I'll fix it." I hung up and stared at my computer. I saw the bank logo on the foreclosure letter in my mind. I thought about my mother, who had planted roses in that front yard for 20 years. I thought about the attic with her dusty easel. I was going to save her house. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed a middleman. I needed someone who could lie. I called Caroline. She picked up on the fifth ring, her voice breezy. "Maddie, what's up?" "Dad's about to lose the house." The breezy tone vanished. "What? No?" "He said he was fine. He said he had it covered. He's not. Mom found a foreclosure notice. He's 3 months behind. They're going to lose it." There was a sharp intake of breath. Oh my God, oh my God. This is awful. What are we going to do? I hated that she said we. "I'm going to pay it," I said flatly. "I'm going to cover the mortgage until he's back on his feet." Silence. "Then you? How can you afford that?" I closed my eyes. "My little hobby is doing fine. But that's not the point. He can't know it's from me. He'll never accept it." "You're right," she said, her voice fast. "He'll be humiliated. It'll destroy him. He'll see it as you looking down on him." "So, I have an idea," I said, hating the words as they came out. "I'll send the money to you. Every month. You give it to them. You tell them, I don't know. You tell them you're handling the finances. You tell them you're managing it like you said. Just, you have to give it to them. In cash. So it doesn't look like charity." I was building a lie. A clean, orderly lie. Caroline was quiet for a long time. I could hear her thinking. I could hear the wheels turning. "Yes," she said finally, her voice firm, like a leader. "Yes, that's smart, Maddie. That's really smart. It's the only way to protect his pride. Dad respects my business sense. He'll listen to me. I'll tell him I'm helping manage the accounts. I'll make it seem like a loan from my firm. Something official. It sounded so good. It sounded so clean." "Thank you, Caroline," I said. I actually felt relief. "Of course," she said. She sounded so noble. "We're family. We have to protect him. Send me your routing number." "Wait, no, just wire it to my account. It's cleaner that way. I'll handle everything. I'll go to the bank and get the cash. I'll give it to Mom and Dad. I'll make sure the mortgage is paid. Don't you worry about a thing." I hung up and set up the automatic transfer. $4,000. I typed into the box. I clicked the button. Monthly. That was the first of the month. For 14 months. No, 15. I checked the records later. 15 months. That's $60,000. $60,000. For the first few months, I would text her. Me. "Did you give them the money?" Caroline. "Handled." My Caroline. "Mom and Dad said to thank me." They're so relieved. I told them I was just restructuring their debt. Caroline. "You're a lifesaver, Maddie. Seriously." I hated the thank me part, but I swallowed it. This was for Mom. This was to keep the peace. The price of peace was $4,000 a month. And my silence, I kept working. My firm grew. I hired another accountant. I moved into a slightly bigger office. I'd go to Sunday dinners. The pandemic rules eased. We'd sit around the table. The food was good. Mom seemed lighter. Dad was still grumpy, but the edge of panic was gone. He'd even started to complain about his golf game again, which was a good sign, and he would praise Caroline. "Your sister," he'd say to me, raising his glass. "She's a miracle worker. Smart as a whip. She's been helping your mother and me with our finances, getting us through this mess. She's got a real head for numbers." Caroline would just smile, that modest, saintly smile. "Oh, Dad, it's nothing," she'd say. "I'm just happy to help. We're family." And she'd look at me. Just a quick glance. A tiny, almost invisible smirk. A smirk that said, "I'm the star. You're the audience." A smirk that said, "Thank you for the money. Keep it coming." I would just look down at my plate. I would chew my food. I'd feel the burning in my chest. I'd tell myself it was worth it. Mom's house was safe. Dad's pride was intact. Peace was expensive, but I could afford it. I told myself that every month when I saw the transfer notification, I told myself that when Caroline bought a new car, "It's a company car," she'd announced. "Perks of the job." I told myself that when she posted pictures of a trip to Mexico, "A work conference," she'd captioned it. So exhausting. I told myself peace was worth the cost. I told myself that for 15 months. I told myself that, right up until the night of the dinner, the night I realized I hadn't bought peace. I had just paid for a lie. And peace bought with deceit never lasts. It just rots from the inside out. It's not peace. It's just a time bomb. and the ticking was getting louder. That night, everything felt normal, which, in our family, meant tense. We sat around Mom's polished mahogany table, the one we were only allowed to eat at on special occasions. This was just a random Tuesday, but Mom had made a roast beef. She always cooked too much when she was nervous. Dad was in a good mood. A great mood. That should have been my first warning sign. He had just poured himself a second, very large glass of red wine. Mom watched him, her smile tight. "I'm telling you, Susan," he boomed, "this is the year. The market's coming back. People are tired of their spare bedrooms. I've got 2 big clients sniffing around the downtown properties." "That's wonderful, Richard," Mom said, passing the potatoes. Caroline was glowing. She wore a new silk blouse. She looked like money. She looked like she didn't have a care in the world. "It's true, Maddie," she said to me. "Dad's been working so hard. But we've been managing. It's been tough, but we've handled it. She said we, like she had been in the trenches. She said we like she had been the one staring at spreadsheets at 3 a.m. I just nodded. "That's great, Caroline. I'm glad things are looking up. I should have kept my mouth shut. I should have just eaten my roast beef. I should have done what I always do. Stay quiet. Be the wallpaper. Don't make waves." But Dad wasn't done. He raised his wine glass. His face was flushed with pride and alcohol. "A toast," he said. We all stopped. Mom picked up her water glass. "I picked up mine. To my daughter Caroline," he said, beaming at her. "Your mother and I, well, we wouldn't have made it through this mess without you. You've been helping us manage the mortgage. You've been paying the bills. You've done it all on your own." I stopped breathing. The air in the room turned to glass, all on her own. He turned his gaze on me. It wasn't mean. It was just pity. A careless, casual pity. He laughed. A short, sharp laugh. "Your sister earned everything on her own, unlike you." And that was it. It wasn't just the lie. It was the effortlessness of it. It was the way Caroline just sat there soaking it in. She wasn't just accepting the praise. She was expecting it. She smiled, a gentle, modest dip of her head, like a saint, like a hero, waiting for her applause. My chest felt hot. It was a slow burn, starting in my stomach and rising up into my throat. I saw every late night I'd ever worked. I saw my first tiny apartment. I saw the bank transfer confirmation, $4,000. I saw another, $4,000, and another. 15 of them, unlike you. He had no idea. He had no idea that his winner daughter was a fraud, and his loser daughter was the only thing standing between him and the street. I should have swallowed it. I should have just let the burning feeling pass. I had done it 1,000 times before. I was the expert at swallowing my anger, my hurt, my own life. But this time, I couldn't. Something inside me, a small, quiet piece of my spine I didn't even know existed, suddenly turned to steel. I was shaking. I put my water glass down, very slowly so it wouldn't make a sound. My voice was quiet. It barely made it across the table. "Then I'll stop sending money." The words just hung there. They landed in the middle of the table like a bomb. The silence was instant. It was complete. Mom's hand trembled, the gravy ladle shaking, and a small drop of brown gravy landed on her clean white tablecloth. She stared at it like it was a spider. Caroline's fork slipped out of her hand. It hit the side of her plate with a loud clink and then fell into her lap. Dad blinked. His proud smile just froze. It was like watching a statue crack. He was confused. The words didn't compute. "What?" he said. "What money?" His voice was genuinely puzzled. And in that second, I knew. He wasn't in on this lie. He was a victim of it, too. He wasn't protecting her. He just truly, completely believed she was the star. I looked at Caroline. Her face had gone from a glowing tan to a pasty, sickly white. Her eyes were wide. She was staring at me. "Don't!" her eyes screamed. "Don't you dare!" "Maddie," Caroline said, her voice a strained, fake laugh. "What are you talking about?" "Don't be weird." "I'm not being weird, Caroline," I said. My voice was still quiet, but it was clear. "I'm talking about the money. The money I've been sending." Dad turned his head, slow, like a machine. He looked from me to Caroline. "What money is she talking about?" he asked again. His voice wasn't booming now. It was low. She's just upset, Dad," Caroline stammered, trying to grab her napkin, her hands fumbling. "She's probably just stressed from work." "I'm not stressed," I said. "I'm just done." Done paying for this? Done paying for what? Dad's voice was rising. Susan, what is she talking about? Mom just shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know. Ask Caroline, I said, finally looking my father in the eye. Ask her about the $4,000. The $4,000 I've been wiring to her bank account on the first of every month for the last 15 months. The bomb had gone off, and we were all just standing in the rubble, breathing in the smoke. Dad's eyes locked onto Caroline. The jovial, proud father was gone. In his place was the CEO, the man who hated being lied to. Caroline, he said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. Is this true? Caroline couldn't speak. She just opened and closed her mouth. She looked at Mom, pleading. Mom's hand was at her throat. You never told us, she whispered. But she was looking at me. Madison? You sent money? I sent it to Caroline, I said, and for the first time I pulled out my phone. The accountant in me, the part of me that loved receipts. I have the bank records. Every single transfer, 15 of them. I sent it to her account so she could give it to you in cash. To pay the mortgage. To protect Dad's pride, I said the last part with a bitterness that surprised even me. Caroline finally found her voice. It wasn't the voice of a saint. It was a shriek. You're a liar, she screamed, jumping up from her chair. You're trying to ruin me. You've always been jealous. You've always hated that Dad was proud of me. Jealous? I was standing now, too. Jealous? I've been paying your bills. I've been paying their bills. While you've been... What exactly? What have you been doing, Caroline? It's complicated. She yelled. There were expenses. You don't understand. I invested it. That was a new lie. It was a bad one. Invested it. Dad's voice cut through her yelling. You invested the money for this house? Yes, she said, grabbing onto the lie. Yes, a startup. A brilliant idea. It's just taking a little longer to pay out. I was going to double it. I was going to pay off the whole mortgage. I was handling it. My brain was working fast. The numbers. The clean, simple numbers. 15 months, I said, my voice cold. At $4,000 a month. That's $60,000. I looked at my father. Dad, did she pay the mortgage? He didn't answer. He just looked at Mom. Susan? He said. Mom's face crumpled. The notices, she whispered. They stopped for a few months, but they started again. Last week. I found another one. In her car? She was looking at Caroline. I found it in your glove box when I was looking for insurance. A final notice. From the bank. The room tilted. I stared at my sister. You didn't even pay the mortgage? It's not that simple, she stammered. There were debts first. I had some startup costs. Startup costs? I snapped. What kind of expense costs 60 grand and leaves us broke? The line from the outline. It wasn't my line. It was hers. She said it to me. You don't understand how hard I've worked, she cried, her eyes flashing with a wild, cornered animal panic. Then show me, I said. I held up my phone. Show me the bank statements. Show me the startup. Show me the investments. Show me where the money went, Caroline. Show us where my $60,000 went. She had nothing. She looked at Dad. His face was granite. Disgust. Pure, cold disgust. She looked at Mom. Mom was just weeping into her napkin, her shoulders shaking. Caroline looked back at me. Her face was twisted. It wasn't sadness. It was pure, unfiltered hate. I hate you, she hissed. I hate you, Madison. She grabbed her purse, a designer bag I now realized I had probably paid for. I hate all of you. She threw her napkin onto her plate of cold roast beef, turned, and ran out of the dining room. We heard the front door slam. We heard her car, the company car, start with a roar and then screech down the street. Silence. It wasn't just silence. It was the sound of an ending. The sound of our family unraveling. Mom's sobbing was the only noise. Dad didn't yell. He didn't rage. He just deflated. He sank back into his chair. He looked old. He looked like a man I had never seen before. He put both his large hands over his face and rested his elbows on the table, right next to his wine glass. What has she done? He whispered into his hands. What has she done? Mom just kept crying. My girls, my family. I just stood there. I was shaking from head to toe. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt my chest. I thought I would feel relieved. I thought I would feel powerful. I thought I'd feel something good. I just felt empty. I felt cold. The truth was out, and it was a million times worse than the lie. I looked at the table. The perfect roast. The congealed gravy on Mom's white tablecloth. The spilled wine. The empty chair where my sister had been. This was my family. This was the perfect family. A pile of secrets and lies paid for by me. I have to go, I said. My voice was a croak. Mom's head snapped up. Madison, no, please don't leave. Not now. I just can't, I said. I backed away from the table. I can't be here right now. I walked out of the dining room. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. I didn't get my coat. I walked out the front door, which Caroline had left wide open. I got into my simple 3-year-old car, the one my dad had made fun of, the one I had paid for in full with my own money. I started the engine. I put it in drive, and I just drove away. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there. I was the one who had pulled the thread, and the entire ugly tapestry had just fallen to the floor. I drove for an hour, maybe 2. I don't know. I just ended up in a parking lot by a lake, a place I hadn't been to since high school. The engine ticked as it cooled. I just sat there. The numbness was a blessing. It was like a thick, cold fog filling my car, filling my head. It kept the panic away. I hadn't just pulled a thread. I had pulled the pin on a grenade that had been sitting on the dinner table for 20 years. What has she done? Dad's words echoed in the silence. He didn't ask, what did you do, Madison? He didn't yell, how dare you? He just broke. And that was so much worse. I replayed the scene. The lie, the toast. My own voice, quiet and cold. Then I'll stop sending money. I had said it. After 31 years of swallowing every insult, every casual dismissal, every time I was the wallpaper, I had finally spoken, and in speaking I had demolished everything. Was I wrong? The accountant in me said no. The books were wrong. The numbers were lies. I had simply performed an audit. I had presented the facts. The fact that the facts had caused an explosion wasn't my fault. The daughter in me just wanted to curl up and disappear. I thought about Caroline, my sister, the star, the sun, and now a black hole. Where did my $60,000 go? Where did she go? She'd run like a coward. She'd left us in the wreckage. I hate you, Madison. She'd said it. The one true, honest thing she'd said all night. She hated me. Not for the money. She hated me for telling the truth. I finally turned the key and drove home. It was almost midnight. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. When I walked in, I saw the scene I had fled. The dining room table was still a disaster. The cold food, the spilled wine, the fallen fork. Mom was at the kitchen sink, her back to me. She was scrubbing the gravy stain on the white tablecloth. Scrubbing it raw? Her shoulders were shaking. Mom, I said, my voice hoarse. She flinched, then turned. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked like she had aged 10 years. She's gone, Mom whispered. I know, I said. She drove off. No, Mom said, dropping the cloth. She came back. While you were gone. She ran upstairs. I heard her. Throwing things. Opening drawers. And then she left again. Her car's gone. She took a suitcase, Madison. A suitcase. This wasn't a tantrum. This was an escape. I walked past her into the dining room. I started picking up the plates. I couldn't stand the smell of the cold roast beef. Where's Dad? He's in his study. The door is closed. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't raging. He was just gone. I cleaned up the dining room. I put the food in the trash. I put the plates in the dishwasher. I worked on autopilot. Numbers, tasks, order. This I could control. By morning, the house was silent. It was the silence of a tomb. Dad's study door was still closed. Mom was asleep on the couch, her face tear-streaked, still in her clothes from last night. And Caroline's room was empty. Mom must have woken up and gone upstairs, hoping. I heard a small broken wail. I ran up the stairs. Mom was standing in the doorway of Caroline's room. It was ransacked. Drawers were pulled out. Clothes were all over the floor. The ones she didn't want. Her jewelry box was open and empty. Her perfume bottles were gone. And on the dresser, weighted down by an empty water glass, was a single piece of paper. A note. Mom's hand trembled as she picked it up. She couldn't read it. Her eyes were too full of tears. She just handed it to me. The handwriting was a fast, angry scrawl. "Don't panic. I'll fix it." That's all it said. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I'll explain." Just "I'll fix it." The delusion. The arrogance. Even now, she thought she was in control. She thought she could fix this. Fix what? Mom sobbed, sinking onto the edge of the messy bed. "What did she do, Maddie? What did she do?" Dad finally emerged from his study. The rage I expected never came. He just walked up the stairs, his feet heavy. He looked at the note. He looked at the empty room, and then he sank into the hallway, his back against the wall, and put his head in his hands. That was the first morning I ever saw him broken. He didn't say a word. He just sat. The great CEO, the patriarch, defeated. Mom was weeping. Dad was silent. I didn't cry. I felt nothing. Nothing but a cold, hard clarity. This was a problem. And I was the only one left who knew how to solve problems. I went to my old room. I grabbed my work bag. I went downstairs to the dining room table, the scene of the crime, and I opened my laptop. I pulled up the bank transfers. All 15 of them. I printed them out one by one. $4,000. $4,000. $4,000. Transaction by transaction. Every lie. Every missing dollar, $60,000, my money. The money I had earned. The money I had saved. Gone. This was my audit. This was my case file. What are you doing? Mom's voice was a whisper from the doorway. I'm finding out where it went, I said. I didn't look up. She said startup costs. She said investment. She was lying. I just need to find out who she was lying for. I couldn't access her bank accounts. That was illegal, but I could search for everything else. I looked at her social media. It was all a performance. The trip to Mexico, work conference. The new car, company perk. The new bag, a gift to myself. It was all a lie. All paid for by me. I was scrolling, a sick feeling in my stomach, when Mom came back into the room. She was holding a crumpled piece of paper. A bank statement. I found this, she said, in her trash can. Under the clothes. It was Caroline's credit card statement. From 3 weeks ago. It was maxed out. But that's not what caught my eye. It was the cash advances. 3 of them. For $1,000 each, and then a recurring payment. A transfer, Maddie, Mom whispered, pointing at the line item. Who is Evan March? The name? It was listed as a business expense. A payment of $5,000. I typed the name into my laptop. Evan March. My screen filled up. A website, glossy and fake, for March Ventures. Stock photos of skyscrapers. Vague words like synergy and growth projection and angel investing. He was a startup guy. A con man? And my sister had fallen for him. No, she hadn't just fallen. She had dragged our entire family into the hole with her. She wasn't fixing it. She was the one who was broken. And this Evan March, he was the one holding the hammer. 2 days passed. Those 2 days were the longest of my life. The house was a pressure cooker. Mom walked around like a ghost, tidying things that were already clean. Dad sat in his study with the door open, just staring at the wall. He wasn't drinking. He wasn't yelling. He was just waiting. The silence was worse than any rage. He had called the bank. The mortgage was indeed in default. The foreclosure was real. The notices Mom had found were the final warning. The perfect Cole family was weeks away from being kicked out of their home. I was at the dining room table. It had become my command center. I had my file. I had the printouts. I had the name. Evan March. I had spent 48 hours digging. He was a professional. He had LLCs in 3 different states, all dissolved. He had a trail of angry reviews on investment forums, all dismissed as sour grapes from partners who got cold feet. He was a predator who dressed like a visionary. He had no idea who he was dealing with. He had conned a desperate, narcissistic girl. He hadn't counted on her sister, the accountant. I was on the phone with my bank's fraud department when the doorbell rang. The sound was so normal. It was violent. Mom jumped. Dad looked up from his study. We all just froze. No one came to our house anymore. Not since the pandemic. Not since the shame. Mom went to the door. I stood up, my hand gripping my phone. She opened it. And there he was. He was impressive. That was the worst part. He wasn't a monster. He was handsome in a slick, careless way. He was probably in his late 30s. He wore a perfectly tailored blue suit, no tie. An expensive watch flashed on his wrist. He smelled like money and confidence, and he was smiling. A bright white easy smile. "Susan Cole?" he said, his voice as smooth as his suit. "I'm Evan March. I'm a business partner of Caroline's. Is she here?" "I've been trying to reach her." "We have some good news to celebrate." Mom was speechless. She just stared at him. I'm sorry," she stammered. "She's not here." "Oh," he said, the smile not faltering. He leaned in, like he was sharing a secret. "Look, I know things have been a bit tense. Caroline told me. Family finances, am I right? It's always a tough conversation. That's why I'm here. I'm here to clear things up." He held up a glossy, expensive-looking folder. "I brought the prospectus for your investment. I wanted to walk you and Richard through the projected growth. Caroline was she was a little overwhelmed by the numbers, and I think I can explain them better. He was trying to con us now. He thought we were just two old, confused parents. He thought he could lie his way out of this." Dad's voice thundered from the study. "Get in here." Evan's smile faltered just for a second. He hadn't counted on Dad. He walked into the foyer, and I stepped out from the dining room. He saw me and his eyes flickered. I was not part of his plan. I was 31 in my old sweatpants holding a laptop. I was not an easy mark. "And you are?" he asked, trying to regain his charm. "I'm Madison, the one who paid for your investment." His smile vanished. "I'm here to see Richard and Susan," he said, turning his back on me. He walked right into the dining room like he owned it. He saw my laptop, my pile of papers. He saw my audit. Dad met him there. He stood up from his chair. Dad was a big man, and for the first time in 3 days, the CEO was back. "You took my daughter's money," Dad said. It wasn't a question. Evan, to my shock, laughed. He opened his folder and handed over the fake brochures. Glossy paper, stock photos of diverse, happy people in meetings. "Mr. Cole." "Richard," he said. "I didn't take anything. Caroline is a partner. She's brilliant. She saw an opportunity. She believed in me. She's a visionary." He was using their own language against them. The language of success, of risk, of being a winner. "She invested," Evan said, tapping the brochure. "We're in the final stages of our seed round. This is a startup, Richard. You can't make something big without risk." "Or lies," I said, my voice cutting through his smooth pitch. He turned to me. The charm was gone. His eyes were cold. "I don't know who you are, but you're upsetting your parents." "I'm the accountant," I said, "and these numbers are fake. This startup is a dissolved LLC registered to a P.O. box in Delaware, and these projected growth charts are a basic template." "You didn't even change the default font!" His face went pale. He had been dealing with Caroline, who was impressed by shiny things. He was not prepared for me, the one who read the fine print. "You took $60,000 from my family," I said, "and I want to know where it is." "That's between me and my partner," he said, his voice turning ugly. "Then where's your partner?" I snapped. "Where is she, Evan?" And as if I had summoned her, we heard it. Tires screeching outside. A car door slamming, the front door, which Mom hadn't closed, burst open. Caroline stood there. She was a wreck. Her hair was matted. She wore the same silk blouse from 2 nights ago. Her eyes were wild. She was holding a crumpled overnight bag. She must have run out of money. She must have come back, tail between her legs, ready to beg, and then she saw him. She froze. The color drained from her face. It was a complete bone-white shock. "Evan?" she whispered. Her voice was a child's voice. "What? What are you doing here?" Evan's face changed again. The charm came flooding back. The smile. He was on again. This was his real mark. "Caroline, baby," he said, walking toward her, arms outstretched. "I'm here. I'm saving us. I'm explaining it to them. The investment, the little delay." Caroline just stared at him. She looked from him to Dad's granite face, to my cold stare, her eyes filled with desperate, stupid tears. You promised," she stammered, looking at Evan. "You promised you'd fix it. You promised you'd call me. You took the last 10,000. You said you'd fix it." And in that instant, the entire pathetic, ugly scam fell apart. She wasn't his partner. She was his mark. She was the well he kept coming back to. And in her desperation to be the winner for our father, she had given him everything. She had given him my everything. The silence that followed Caroline's words was absolute. It was the sound of a bomb detonating, but in total silence. Evan. He was good. He was already recovering. He was already spinning. "Baby, that 10,000 was for the lawyers," he said, his voice low and soothing. "To protect our assets." I was protecting us. I was protecting you. Caroline, so desperate for a life raft, actually seemed to be listening. She was nodding. The lawyers? Dad just watched, his face a mask of pure, cold fury. He was finally seeing, perhaps for the first time, what his golden girl was made of. Not gold, not even glitter, just dust. Evan was about to speak again. He was going to spin another lie. He was going to get her, and then all of us, back on his side. He was going to ask for more money. "You're wrong, Evan," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Everyone looked at me. "You're not saving anyone, and you're not protecting her," Evan scoffed. A genuine dismissive sound. "And who are you again? The accountant? Listen, sweetheart, why don't you go back to your little numbers? This is the big leagues. Your sister and I'm the one who called the bank," I said, cutting him off. "I'm the one who flagged the transfers as fraudulent. I'm the one who has spent the last 2 days documenting every single one of your dissolved LLCs. And I'm the one who contacted the police. I hadn't yet. But I was bluffing, or was I just kidding? I wasn't bluffing. I contacted the police 2 days ago, Evan," I said. "The moment I found your name. I sent them my file, the printouts, the transfers, the bank fraud report, my little numbers, his face. It was beautiful. It wasn't the crack of a grin. It was the complete collapse. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered and fell to the floor. The smug, confident con man was gone. In his place was a pale, terrified, cornered rat. You what?" he stammered. "This is a civil matter." He tried to yell, his voice suddenly 3 octaves higher. "This is a business dispute." "You can't!" "It stopped being a business dispute when you took $60,000 under false pretenses," I said. "That's called wire fraud. And I think they're right on time. As if on cue, we all saw it. The flashing lights. Red and blue, painting the living room walls, sweeping across Evan's terrified face. A car door slammed. Not a flimsy car door like Carolyn's. A heavy, solid, official one. A knock came at the door. Firm, heavy. Dad, moving like a man in a dream, walked to the door and opened it. 2 police officers stood on our doorstep. They were calm, professional. "Ma'am, sir," one of them said. "We're responding to a fraud claim made by a Ms. Madison Cole. Is there an Evan March at this residence?" Evan was already backing away toward the kitchen. "Toward the back door." "That's him," I said, pointing. The second officer stepped inside. "Mr. March, we need to ask you a few questions." "You've got this all wrong," Evan sputtered. "It's a misunderstanding. She's my partner." "Tell them, Caroline. Tell them we're partners." He looked at Caroline, pleading, and my sister. My broken, selfish, foolish sister. Finally broke, she just collapsed. She slid down the wall and started to sob. It wasn't a quiet cry. It was a full-body, gasping, ugly wail. I just, she choked out, her face buried in her hands. "I just wanted Dad to be proud. I'm so sorry." Evan's face hardened. He knew he'd lost her. He knew he'd lost. "You called them?" He hissed at me. All the charm gone, leaving only pure, uncut venom. I looked him dead in the eyes. "I stopped sending money. Not justice." The officer was unhooking his handcuffs. "Mr. March, you need to come with us. This is ridiculous." "I want my lawyer," he yelled. "You'll have plenty of time to call him," the officer said, as he spun Evan around and put his hands behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a lock, a final, finished, balanced book. They read him his rights. Right there in our foyer. The same foyer Mom had just decorated for fall, with pumpkins and a welcome mat. And Dad just stood in the doorway, frozen. His authority, the thundering, booming power he had wielded our entire lives, was completely gone. It had been taken from him. Not by the police. Not by Evan, by me. The quiet one. The wallpaper. The officers led Evan out. He didn't look back. Caroline was still sobbing on the floor. Mom was standing over her, her hand on her daughter's shaking head, but her face was just blank, numb. And me? I stood there by the dining room table with my file of printouts. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I wasn't anything. And for the first time in my entire life in that house, standing in front of my broken father, I didn't feel small. The weeks that followed were a blur. A horrible, gray, necessary blur. The house didn't go into foreclosure. The first thing I did the day after the arrest was go to the bank. I took my file. I took the police report. I sat down with a manager who looked like he was carved from stone. I explained everything. The fraud. The diverted funds. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I made a proposal. I was an accountant after all. I requested a deferment, a restructuring. I presented my firm's financials. I showed them my income, my stability. I agreed to assume the loan. The house my father had almost lost was now, on paper, mine. He and Mom were, in effect, my tenants. The legal process for Evan was illuminating. He wasn't just a con man. He was a professional. The police discovered he had scammed 4 other women before Caroline. 4 other families. We were just the only ones who had an accountant who built a case file before the police showed up. He had no defense. The money trail was clean. My $60,000 had gone from my account to Caroline's, and then in a series of desperate, foolish transfers to his. Caroline had to testify. That was the hardest day. I sat in the back of the courtroom. Mom and Dad were there in the front row. Dad, in a suit that looked too big for him. Mom, looking small and frail. Caroline walked to the stand. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely be sworn in. Her voice was a tiny whisper. The prosecutor was gentle. "Ms. Cole, can you identify the man at that table?" She looked at Evan. He was in a cheap suit, his slick hair a mess. He wouldn't look at her. "Yes," she whispered. "That's Evan. And did he promise you a return on an investment?" "Yes." "Did he promise to make you rich? To fix your family's problems?" Caroline started to cry. He said I was a visionary. He said I was smart. He said he loved me." The courtroom was silent. She told the truth. All of it. The lies she told our parents. The money she took from me. The desperate hole she was in. She didn't spare herself. It was the first truly honest act I had ever seen her perform. When the judge read the sentence, 3 years in state prison, there was no applause. Evan just slumped. Mom let out a small, quiet sigh. It wasn't victory. It was just relief. The quiet, exhausted relief of a storm finally passing. We drove home in silence. Life changed. It had to. The house felt different. The booming silence was replaced by a softer quiet. Dad wasn't the CEO anymore. He was just Richard. He started helping Mom in the garden. I'd come over and see him on his knees in the dirt, planting flowers. He started making coffee in the morning, bringing a cup to Mom. Caroline. She was the most changed. Her first act of healing was a ritual. I came over one Saturday and she was in the backyard. She had a small metal trash can. She was burning things. I stood at the kitchen window and watched. She was burning his photos. The fake brochures. The letters he'd written her. She was burning the lie. She found work. Not a flashy marketing job. A real job. She became a receptionist at a small veterinary clinic. Her first honest job in years. She was quiet. She was humble. She came home. She paid Mom a small amount for rent from her first paycheck, and she read books. It was slow. One evening, I was at the kitchen table, the real family table, helping Mom with the bills. Dad sat down across from me. He just watched me for a long time. "We failed both of you," he said, his voice soft. I looked up. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his own hands resting on the table. "We put her on a pedestal she couldn't breathe on," he said. "And we put you in the shadows. We never even looked. We never saw you, Madison. We just took." My throat was tight. I didn't disagree. I didn't say, "It's okay, Dad." It wasn't okay. I just nodded and went back to the bills. He was quiet for another minute. Then he said, "I'm proud of you, Madison." I stopped. The pen froze in my hand. I looked up at him. He was looking at me now. His eyes were clear. And for the first time, they weren't filled with pity or annoyance or dismissal. They were just proud. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "And after all of it, the betrayal, the lies, the arrest, the trial, the screaming, the crying. That was the thing that finally made me cry. I just put my head down on the kitchen table, among the water bills and the spreadsheets, and I wept. Not for the money, not for the pain, I finally felt seen. It wasn't victory. It was peace. Spring came, and the house finally felt like home again. Mom started painting, her easel no longer dusty. Dad took long walks and learned to listen. Caroline, working her first honest job at a vet clinic, started paying me back $50 at a time. She was finally real. The night before I left for Seattle, Caroline handed me an old photo of us as kids. On the back, she wrote, "Sometimes love means facing the truth, even when it hurts." We hugged, a real hug, after 30 years. The next morning, I drove away. I saw them on the porch, my real, messy, honest family. I realized family doesn't end when it breaks. It begins when it rebuilds. And for the first time in my life, my books were finally perfectly balanced. My name is Madison Cole. I'm an accountant. And for the first time in my life, my books are perfectly, completely balanced. Thank you for following my story. If you've ever felt like the invisible one in your family, I hope this helps. And if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and drop a comment to let me know where you are watching from.